everyone. Thanks for joining me after lunch. I am John Vintzel. I'm from Microsoft out of Redmond, and I'm the product lead for MSIX. So me and my team are the ones that put together the packaging, the deployment, and the runtime model for MSIX. And we're here to kind of talk about, like it was introduced, what's kind of happened over the past year and what's to come. And presenting with me is...
Hi, everyone. I'm Sharla Akers. I'm a program manager working on John's MSIX team, and I own the MSIX packaging tool as well.
Cool. So let's get started here. Just a quick show of hands. How many people know what MSIX is? OK, so great, because I don't have a lot of overview. I'm taking a little bit of an assumption people know, because I really want to dive into some upcoming features. I have some hot-off-the-press demos, so a couple demos are going to be a little rough, but they're kind of showing some of the functionality coming together based on customer asks. So we'll kind of get rolling here. So really, I get asked the question of why would I go and change app deployment? And over the past few years, we've looked at different things from Microsoft technologies. We've tried different things, like we tried, the Windows 8 apps, some of the AppX and the UWP model. And really, it was a lot of good things about reliability and a better installation, and then a lot of bad things about rewriting all your code. So really, we wanted to find ways that we could go and improve enterprise app deployment, give you better features and functionalities, but then leverage your existing apps and code base without having to go rewrite the things like that. And really, it's helping bring things like a user-centric model there and really drive down your IT costs. So when we look at that, there's really kind of three foundational pillars that people look to for MSIX. The first one really being the reliability of the installation. So we don't have great numbers from an MSI world, because telemetry wasn't really a thing from Microsoft. And honestly, if we did it, it probably got blocked at the firewalls. But anecdotally, I hear like a success rate of just an MSI, like you take it just the way it is kind of like the mid to high 80s. Now, most of the folks in the audience here, you guys do a lot of work, whether you repackage the app, you write a script to bring that success level up, and then I hear you guys get to somewhere like around 95, 96%. So that's still like a 4 or 5% failure rate. If you're in a smaller, medium-sized enterprise, across 10,000 users, that's a few hundred devices. You go to 100,000 users, that's a few thousand devices. So really, MSIX is focused on reliability, and right now we're seeing 99.96% reliability. And how do we get that number? We get that number from all the MSIXs that come from the Microsoft Store, including our pre-installed apps that get installed. So we're seeing hundreds of millions of installs on a reoccurring basis that show us telemetry numbers getting to about 99.96%. The next big thing that we see is really around the network bandwidth optimizations that we have. So if you've seen me do talks on other conferences, I kind of go into some details about how we have a block map and we focus on pulling down only the files and the blocks that are needed when we're doing an app deployment. So as you're moving to maybe some more cloud-centric solutions, we really want to reduce the bandwidth that it takes to do app installations, especially at an update. We don't want to be in a world where you have to pull the entire package down every single time. If it's a 100 meg package, but you only need a 10 meg change. So a lot of the disk optimizations are into the MSIX pipeline. And then lastly, just disk space, right? People are buying varying sized devices. We're seeing people are going some low-cost routes. Maybe you're in an education space. Maybe you just have a whole bunch of task-based workers and you don't want to spend a lot of money on a device. So we do optimizations at the OS layer so that we're not duplicating files on the disk. We manage and understand the entire installation. And if one app's using a file and another app needs it, we'll just link those apps over. And then if one of the apps changes the version, that's fine. We manage those relationships and links, and we'll make sure the apps don't break. Okay, and then really kind of talked about most of this. Guaranteed uninstall. We want to get to a world where there's no PC rot. It's really easy to uninstall apps. If you need to reinstall an app, it's really easy. So MSIX brings all that forward. So what does MSIX support look like? We announced support about a year ago, and that's when 1809 was made available. So we just kind of celebrated our one-year anniversary a little bit. 1809 had a slow start, so do I celebrate it when we first launched, or do I celebrate it when the customers actually got it? And then in February of this year, based on some customer feedback, we went and certified 1709 and 1803 for support in MSIX. And that's for any deployment outside of the Microsoft Store. If you're using the Microsoft Store, it's still an 1809 requirement. But if you're scripting, if you're using PowerShell, you're using Configuration Manager, all that works with 1709 and later. So as of Wednesday, that's all the supported Windows 10 operating systems out there because 1703 just went end of life. No limits on distribution. What this really means is we want MSI to be a default installer. We want it to actually be the default installer in most cases. We can't do that if we block you from where you can install it. So we want to be open in the platform, and we want to make sure that if you want to install from a website, it's perfectly fine to do that. You don't have to use the store. If you want to use the store, it's a great option, but you can host from a website, you can host from Configuration Manager, you can build your own server. However you want to distribute an app, much like an MSI, MSIX can be distributed that way. Also, deploy to any Windows edition. We've had other technologies, specifically like AppV, where we charged you for the technology, and then we limited the SKUs. To be successful and to make sure that MSIX can be the default installer technology, we need to make it available. It needs to be free, and it needs to be everywhere. So that's what we really push for MSIX. So that brings me to a big change that we kind of announced through the Insider program. We had this concept of sideloading. So when you wanted to use an MSIX package, you had to go and enable a sideloading setting. Now, in a lot of SKUs, this was already enabled. We are getting rid of that setting. We were invested foundationally in MSIX, and it should be on parity with MSI. So going forward, you will no longer see a sideloading setting for MSIX and Windows. What we have done, if you do want to control some of the installations, is we had this app install control already in Windows 10, and this was there for MSI, setup.exe, and things like that. MSIX is now just folded in here. So if you want to go and restrict some of the distribution sources, you can do it actually through the UX of the app install control. And then if you're an enterprise, you can control it through Defender application control or through App Locker. So you might want to make sure people aren't playing Candy Crush Saga or something like that. You can go and put a policy in place to go and block that. And then for the sideloading policies, we are keeping the group policy around. So if you actually were using a deny for compatibility reasons, we're going to do that. But it's only really available if you're using group policy. And most of the folks weren't actually enabling it. But we wanted to make sure we didn't pull something out that a customer was relying on. So that brings me over to developer mode. Just kind of touch on this. Because we got rid of the sideloading setting, now developer mode becomes an on-off switch. It's pretty straightforward. If you want to develop, throw it on. It could be managed by a group policy. So if you guys are doing things over GPO, perfectly acceptable to do that. And then just be careful if you're setting the app install control in developer mode, because you can create a way that they'll have a little bit of a conflict and it'll be weird from a development environment. So just kind of keep an eye on that. And then I kind of touched upon most of this stuff in general. You can deploy any way you want. If you're using management tools, Configuration Manager has a built-in experience. It just leverages the Windows apps. Intune, it uses the LOB app support. And then you can just use script with PowerShell. So we have all the PowerShell commandlets, add, get, remove. And we'll kind of dive a little bit more into that in the next session and how all those work. So that being said, how do we get to MSIX? So we have support available with most of the major tooling vendors. A bunch of the folks are here today, so feel free to talk to them about their MSIX support. If you guys are using a tooling vendor to build app packages and it's not on the list, let me know. I'll reach out to them. Our goal is to create a rich ecosystem and make sure that we're really successful with MSIX. That being said.
Yep. And so if you aren't using one of these tooling vendors and you're using the MSIX packaging tool, we would like to announce that as of today, the October release of the MSIX packaging tool is now available. If you're not familiar with the MSIX packaging tool, it's available in the Windows Store. Today we're released the latest version, and we ship roughly every 3 months with a public release, and new features come out independent of the OS updates. So the OS gets updated twice a year. The packaging tool, we really wanted to deliver kind of value more frequently than that. And a lot of our updates and features that we've added are based on user feedback that we've gotten. So in this latest version of the MSIX packaging tool, which you might have gotten early if you're a part of the MSIX Insider program, where you can get packages of the MSIX packaging tool that are still in development. You can sign up there and get kind of the early releases. But in the October release, we have a couple of new features. So one is integration with enterprise signing. So that is our device guard signing. So if you have an AAD in your enterprise, you can go in and using the MSIX packaging tool, that'll be integrated in the workflow. You can specify that in your settings, and then that'll just work throughout every workflow that you do. And then the enterprise signing is also available outside of the packaging tool if that's how you're using it. We also added right-click edit for package editor. So if you have an existing MSIX package, you can simply right-click on that package and edit with the MSIX packaging tool, and it'll launch the package editor context. We also made a couple of UX and workflow improvements. So one thing that we did is we actually flipped around some of the steps in the process. So before we had the prepare computer step a little bit further in the process, we were getting some feedback that wasn't quite working well for people, and so we flipped that around. So you set up your environment, and then you select your installer and proceed. And then just some quality improvements as well.
Let's talk a little more about the signing stuff.
Yeah.
Go into detail?
Yeah. So signing MSIX packages. We kind of talk about signing as something that we're really working on, and we don't want it to be difficult. Like, we think that signing should just be easy. So there's a couple of different ways that people sign their packages today. Enterprises will sometimes have a certificate authority, so they've got their own first-party certificate that they're using. Generally, this means that it doesn't need to be deployed, and it's just in all of their machines. Alternatively, they can use trusted third-party certificates, so those PFX files. This also is supported in the MSIX packaging tool.
And that would be something like a DigiCert, a Komodo, a semantic style trusted third party?
Yep. And then if you're deploying through the Store for Business, they actually do the signing and certification process for you. And then the latest that we have is signing with the device guard signing. So if you have an AAD tenant, you simply go to the Store for Business, turn on the permission to sign, and that's all you need to do. And then go in and sign with your tenant. You don't need to worry about deploying any root certificates. It's already trusted in your tenant.
So how many people know what device guard is? Okay, so for the people that don't know, device guard is a feature in Windows 10 that allows you to go and lock down your devices to certain code integrity policies or CI policies. And what we've done is, in some cases, you might have code that's not signed or not yours. So you can go and create this catalog, which is basically an index of all the files. You can get that catalog signed, and then it'll fall into the CI policy. So in a world where you have this old unsigned app, you could have gone and created a catalog, had that signed, and then you kind of vouch for the app. We had a service to do that signing specific for the catalog, and really we started expanding that to let you do more with your enterprise. And I think you have another slide.
We've got another slide too. So kind of to click into the signing with the device guard. So like John mentioned, it does leverage the device guard signing, which is already a service that Microsoft provides. If you've got an AAD already, there's a unique publisher ID per tenant, so you don't need to worry about other applications won't work in other tenants. So if you're grabbing an app, if someone's trying to take your application, it's not going to work for them. The app digests, like John mentioned, are submitted to the signing service so that it reduces your network impact. And then it does require the 20H1 SDK for signing, but the apps can be deployed to any Windows version. And now we'll have a demo.
So one thing to just kind of touch on there is, when we think about signing against Microsoft services, one of the concerns is like, hey, if the store is signing it, the store will always be accepted on my device. As we think about leveraging this device guard signing service, it is a unique signing route per tenant. So me at Contoso and Sharla at Fabricam, if someone's passing me a game or something like that that's signed from that tenant, unless my IT shop actually trusts that route, we'll block the installation. So we wanted to give flexibility to make it easy to sign, but not open up everything so that any random app can be brought into your enterprise. So let me transition over into a demo. So I have a demo of just kind of how simple it is to do some of the device guard signing. Let me log in here. Okay, so it's a little small, but my console will be big. So what you'll notice here, if you can see on the bottom corner, which you probably can't, is I'm on an 1809 image. So again, one of the things that you need for the signing is just a newer SDK. So you don't need to actually upgrade your Windows operating systems. It's just an upgrading to the signing tooling, not an update to Windows to accept these packages with signing. So on this device here, I'm just going to go to a folder where I have a script. And I'm going to run this script. And what this script is going to do is going to ask me for 3 inputs. It's going to ask me for a package or a folder with some packages. So I have like 3 MSIX packages just to show how I can go do that. A link to my redistribution, so that SDK, I've just put the SDK into a folder. And then lastly, it's going to ask me for my credentials. So let me put the information in. Okay, and then before I start this, let me just show one thing real quick here. So if we go to my PC here, and I have this MSIX folder, you'll notice if I go to the properties of this, you won't see what you normally see for a signed package, which is the digital signature tab, because this app doesn't actually have any signing on it at all. So zoom out. If I were to go to try to install this app, because it's unsigned, Windows is going to tell me that, hey, I can't install it. You know, hey, I need something signed. So this is the package before I go through the process. And then let me type in my password. Let's hope I got that right. So right now it's just calling in the sign tool. What it did is when I gave it my credentials, it went and got an authorization token from Azure, and it's going to cache that locally so I can run through it in a batch process. And it's right now digest signing, so hopefully the internet holds up. They did bring me a cable and I waved them off, so I'm hoping I didn't make a bad choice on that. But we can see it just went through and signed successfully the first one, and now it's looping through the couple other packages. And then if I go back to the folder, you know, one thing you'll notice in here is the date timestamp changed because, hey, I just signed this, 4:17 a.m., I'm still on Redmond time. And then more importantly, if I go to the properties of the app, you'll see a couple things. You'll see the digital signatures came through, and then when you go in there, you can actually see the name of the signer, which is my Vintzel.onmicrosoft.com tenant. And then, you know, obviously I did some time stamping so the app won't expire down the road based on that. So just like that, it was pretty easy to sign packages. I used it just based on my Azure AD identity. If I go and install this app now, you'll see my really simple employees app will just go run and install. So that's kind of one of the first things we've done to really improve some of the experiences around MSIX. The next thing is we're bringing MSIX to all the Windows platforms. So we have it on 1709, 1803, and everything later. So for Windows 10, we're in fairly good shape. But really, you know, where we're struggling is some of the down-level and server operating systems. And this is where this concept called MSIX Core comes into play. So again, we're going to bring it to Windows 7, 8.1, and earlier editions of Windows 10. And what I really mean by that is that 1607 LTSB that's sitting out there, as well as all the server editions, because we want to let you be able to standardize on a single MSIX package and deploy it within your enterprise. Now, when we think about MSIX Core, it's not going to bring all the functionality of MSIX down level. I mean, the amount of code it would take to bring the full containerization and deployment stack down level, it'd pretty much be let's update to Windows 10. But what we're going to be able to do is allow you to use that package and treat it a little bit more like an MSI. So we'll be able to go and, you know, deploy the app. It won't have the guarantees of, you know, the no PC rot or, you know, the virtualized registry or file system, but it won't be any different than the MSI you had. And it'll still let you go and standardize on a single package. So this is all being developed out in the open on our GitHub. So if folks are interested, there's actually a preview out there you can go and check out and see what's going on with it. We did some work for developers, so developers can consume it, and as they start building packages for you that are MSIX, they have a way to deploy it down level. And then what we're going to do for enterprise IT pros is we're going to make an MSI. You can deploy that MSI once to your enterprise, and it'll be aware of MSIX moving forward on all those devices. And we do plan on releasing it later this year, but right now I actually have a demo of it going from the MSI route. So let me switch over to my other VM. So here's my Windows 7 VM. We go into a folder, and I have some MSIX packages. So you can see them here. They're in MSIX file, there's no file type association. I'll go click on it. It'll say I don't know what it is because I don't understand this file format. That's fine. And then I'll go over here and not right click because it's Windows 7. But I'll go and launch a command prompt. And actually, I don't need that yet. Sorry, I jumped ahead of my demo. What I'll do is I'll go and install MSIX Manager, which is MSIX Core. So you get this MSI. It's about 2 meg in size, so it's really lightweight. I jokingly think it'll be the last MSI I ever have to install in my enterprise. I can dream, but there's a good chance it could hold up. So we'll go and install this. Again, super lightweight. And now what you'll see here is, hey, all my file type associations lit up. You can see them there. And now if I go and double click on one of these packages, it'll prompt me, and I can go and install it, and my app runs. So I was able to go and take this Notepad++ that I made MSIX, now effectively use it down level. What's also cool, while we didn't bring all of the containerization level, we did bring the integrity model down to Windows 7. So I have another package in here. It's not actually trusted on my device. So as I go and try to install it, it's going to probably give me failed. It'll give me another failure code here. The codes are a little generic. As I said, we're still trying to finish up the release for the V1 of this. But it allows us to hold the security or the integrity promise that's MSIX through any of the devices, even where we can't give you some of the containment that we give you on the newer Windows 10. But we believe this gives you pretty good reach for your enterprise and the ability to go standardize on MSIX. We also have full command line interface. So if I go back and relaunch my command prompt here, I can do MSIX Manager, and I believe it's find package, and star, and it'll show me all the packages that are installed. And then likewise, if I go into Control Panel, we do register them in the legacy add remove programs. So you can see in here, even though I installed it through the MSIX Manager, we actually register it here so it has that common feel that you'd have on these down-level operating systems. So that's a preview of MSIX Core and what we're doing to make MSIX more accessible throughout your enterprise.
So the next thing I want to talk about is our MSIX Toolkit. So with MSIX, we really want to help enable you guys to kind of get a depth of tools to help you with MSIX. So with MSIX Toolkit, we've got a couple of things in there to help you just kind of move on to MSIX a little bit faster. We've got the MSIX Toolkit available on GitHub. Within it, we've got a couple of different things. So one is the App Installer File Builder app. So the App Installer app that helps you, when you double click on an MSIX, it launches that nice UI. That's our App Installer UI. But you can use the App Installer file to kind of manage your updates and things like that when you're not deploying using Configuration Manager or Intune, things like that. So this just helps you build that XML file. So if you're kind of just like, I'm tired of writing XML, you can go into the App Installer File Builder app, and it gives you a nice UI where you just plug in your MSIX package and your URI, and it'll build out that App Installer file for you. We also have a modified package publisher script. So if you've got a set of MSIX packages that you've converted, but they aren't signed correctly, you can use this script to bulk sign your applications and modify your package publisher to make sure that your app publisher matches up with the subject of your certificate. The last one that we have in there right now is the batch conversion script. So what you can do is you can use that and specify a folder of MSIs, run that batch conversion script, and it'll convert all of those MSIs to MSIX without you having to do the kind of interactive install using one of the packaging tools. And then in the toolkit as well, it does have all of the Redis files that you'll need. So everything that you need for all of these different options in the toolkit are available.
So one of the cool things about this is all of these kind of organically came from us working with our TAP customers. It's like we had needs for a little bit of scripts, we had need for the file builder because they were hosting on a website. And we thought, hey, as we're developing in this, sometimes we won't have the time to productize these into something like the ADK. So we decided to put the toolkit together, allow people to contribute, maybe give us ideas for other things, and then we can also release it at any kind of frequency we want. And then the most important thing, I start showing things like the signing, and I say you need a developer SDK. That's a pretty large download. Giving you any of the things that you need to work with MSIX in a Redis that's easy to get a hold of was another one of our kind of common goals there.
Yep. So if you've got any good scripts for MSIX, add them here. And that is available online at aka.ms/MSIX-toolkit. The next thing that I want to talk about is MSIX with services. So we all know, services, MSIX, it hasn't happened quite yet, but this is happening now. With MSIX, all of the installs will require elevation, and this is going to also require an update to Windows 10 20H1, but it is happening, so this will be available in the 20H1 and then also in the MSIX packaging tool. The support for that is also coming soon.
Cool.
And now a demo.
I have a demo of just kind of showing services work in action here. So let's minimize this here. And let me, oh yeah, perfect, here it is. All right, so if I go to my computer here, I'm just going to open up services and scroll down. Just kind of show what's installed. So I'm going to install an app that has a couple test services. You can see here between, telephony, themes, time broker, there's no test service there. So I'm going to go into my folder here, and I have a package. And the first thing you'll notice here is, obviously we're going to let the user know if you're double clicking it, it's going to install a service on their machine. But more importantly, you're going to see the shield next to the install button, indicating that it is going to need elevation, and it's going to actually prompt you for elevation when we go and install it. And this is the first time that MSIX actually has required any kind of elevation. We've really tried to keep it a true user-centric, kind of a contained model where we didn't need to do it. But for compatibility reasons, we wanted to make sure that we could allow people to bring their old apps that aren't in development and start taking advantage of the features of MSIX. So this is just an internal test app we have that had a service that we packaged up. And if I go over here back into my computer management, I can go ahead and refresh, and then you'll kind of see the test services appeared, right? So now I can go and actually just uninstall the app. And uninstall here. And then when I go back in, you'll see that the services were cleaned up. So I can easily, safely remove that app and take those services out of there. So this is available, the service work is actually available in the 20H1 insider builds. Right now, our packaging tool doesn't support capturing it. So it's kind of a situation where if you wanted to try it out and you knew how to craft an MSIX with the service, it would be there. But we are hoping to get some stuff out relatively early before the 20H1 release launches, so people can give us some feedback on installing the apps with the service. Cool. The next thing that we introduced, and this was feedback that we've gotten over the past year, was enabling first launch configurations. A lot of people were like, hey, I want to run a custom script when I deploy an app. Hey, I know you have this modification package, but it's a little too heavyweight. I just need to do a lightweight configuration. So we spent some time with some customers. We talked about various ways to do it. And we introduced the first launch or run one style configurations within the container. So you can get that level of configuration and, into your app without having to add scripts into the deployment path. We don't have to do things like custom action where it makes it really easy to kind of put malware on the device. We're doing it all within the concepts of the container. You can do these actions on launch or on shutdown of the app, and it can be run once or it can be run every time. And this just went live over the past week, so it's out on our GitHub, aka.ms/MSIX-PSF. PSF is our package support framework, and it builds off of that. So you can go and leverage this, and there's some docs out there to kind of help you get started. I do have a quick demo. This was kind of a rough demo one of my devs threw together, so we can take a quick look at how it is in action. So I'm actually going back to the VM I used in that previous signing demo. And the reason I'm going back to this is a couple of reasons. One, it's that 1809 image, and I have an app there that has the first launch script in it, and it's showing how leveraging the PSF, we don't need to rev the Windows operating system. So unlike the services work where I needed a new version of Windows to take advantage of that feature, there's things we can do in this package support framework that don't require you to update the Windows operating system, so that we can give you, a scale of operating systems that you can use without constantly forcing you to take a new Windows update. I mean, we'd love you to update to Windows 10 every single time we release it, but we know there are some challenges there, and it's just not possible. So, like I said, this script was just done up really quickly by one of my devs. So what I'm going to do is it's going to install the app. When it launches, it's going to map a drive and then show me hello world, and then it's going to shut down and disconnect the drive. So take a second to install here. And then you can see it launch the PowerShell script on the first launch. It's mapping the drive. It should prompt me. Okay, and then we should see a hello world come up. And now the app's going to shut down and it's just going to delete the environment. But this is really helping you get those configurations that you need into your app and not having to write custom deployment code or do things like custom action, and give you a lot of flexibility while it still all writes to the virtual registry and file system. Okay, so how many people do virtual desktop infrastructure or VDI? How many folks in the crowd do that? Okay, so one of the other things that we were kind of looking at is people are using different layering and streaming solutions. How do we make this better with MSIX for you? And that's really, some of the challenges that we see is like, hey, when I'm in this VDI world, what do? Do I have to keep repackaging to a custom package format? Do I have to keep recreating my images all the time? Where is the data going to go be stored, right? It's kind of a hodgepodge mess up there. A lot of people are doing images where they're injecting all the possible apps, and then with masking is what they call it, where they just basically hide the apps for the user. And it's really becoming a challenging nightmare to really kind of maintain. And we're seeing things where, like, one of my customers' logon times were up to 7 minutes. So it's kind of crazy when you think about that. If I want to log in and 7 minutes later I get access to my session, to me that's a little bit ridiculous. This is where a concept called MSIX App Attach comes into play. It's our team working with the Windows Virtual Desktop team and another company that we purchased, I believe it was earlier this year, called FSLogix. And between the three Microsoft products, we've built a solution to really help with some of this layering. And it's a combination of leveraging the new Windows Virtual Desktop infrastructure and this FSLogix component that's going to help do the app data redirection and layering feature. And then MSIX, where it uses this App Attach feature, where it basically mounts VHD in the data center and presents the apps without having to fully install them. And then when the user goes and runs the application, we just cache the bits that they need at that time. So if you compare that to something like an App vWorld, you had to go create your app for streaming. You had to go generate 2 feature blocks, feature block 1 and feature block 2. And anytime a user logged in, the entire feature block 1 came down regardless if they used the app or not. With MSIX App Attach, we actually do a very lightweight download, and it's just a few K download, and it's really to light up the tiles and things like file type association. So from the user's perspective, the app is just there and present, and then when they go and use it, we'll just cache the bits that they need. We're not going to do feature blocks, and the IT Pro doesn't have to do anything special for the app. They just deploy it to a hard disk, much like they deploy it to a hard disk for a physical client. And then Windows, we've done the intelligence at the file system layer to kind of handling the access to the files and the bits. So I'm going to be really, really brave. I have a prototype environment in the cloud that I'm going to kind of show how App Attach works. Let's pray it works for me. It did work last week. Okay, so this is my Windows Virtual Desktop environment. Let's see if I remember my ID. There we go. All right, I think I got my password right. So it's going to log on. You can see, during logon, it's going to use, FSLogix. This is where it's actually bringing all my data forward and mounting that. This is pre-production, so we're finishing up this feature right now. So if it crashes, I apologize, but I think we're going to be good for the demo. And as I say that, I get my black screen. There we go. Okay. So typically for MSIX App Attach, I would log in and all my apps would be there. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually manually do the attach, so I can show you how the app isn't really installed, and then kind of show you the launch to see how it works. So if I go to my file system here, and just do a quick properties, you'll see it's 28.2 gig or 3370 and some change. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go run this script that's going to do the app attach. And what this is going to do is it's going to app attach the UWP version of OneNote, which is leveraging the MSIX infrastructure. And it's going to go really, really quick there. And you can see that OneNote's launched and up and running. And if I go back here, you'll see it's barely installed any files or footprint. So I was able to attach and launch the initial version of the app, and there's very little footprint put down on the device. Now, the more and more I use the app, it'll start caching a little bit more of it. But in a world where you might have 20, 30 apps that you want to be available to a user, you don't have any of that payload going down. So at 9 a.m. when all the users come in and start logging in, you've really minimized, one, the logon times, and two, the amount of network traffic that's happening, because all these unneeded bits are not coming down to the device. Cool, so that was a quick demo of MSIX App Attach.
You already clicked.
Wait, there you go.
There we go. Okay. So one other thing that is coming soon is support for delivery optimization. So with Intune, we're going to have the native support for delivery optimization built in, so that all of the peer caching and things like that will just work automatically. Again, this is shipping with the 20H1 Insider previews. So if you've got that, you can test that out now, or with the delivery optimization. This also does the native support for the HTTPS installs as well.
So how many people use delivery optimization or are looking to do delivery optimization? How many people know about DO? Okay, a few people. So as you read about it, this is a great way to kind of reduce some of the network that's going to the cloud and back, and kind of leverage some of the peer caching. And the most important kind of thing to think about here is if you enable DO, you don't have to do anything. We just integrate with the stack. As long as you're going over HTTP, HTTPS, which folks like Intune do, it just comes for free, no setup needed. So we're really trying to help grow that delivery optimization model out, and MSIX would just plug in and play a nice role into that model.
In addition, flexible containers is kind of our kind of the similar idea to the AppV connection groups. So I know I've talked to a lot of people that have talked about, how do I get the MSIX packages to talk to one another? And this is what we're kind of working on for bringing that parity for connection groups to MSIX. We're working on it right now. It's not quite available, but we're working on prototyping and getting that working with the next Windows release. So that'll be good. And then also just wanted to mention, if you're kind of not quite started with MSIX, or you want to get kind of a good introduction to MSIX, we do have these training labs. There's an overview video, so if you're talking to someone who's like, what is MSIX, give me a quick spiel, you can send this video to them, and it's a really great overview of what is MSIX, what can it do, and things like that. There are detailed exercises that you can do to kind of cover the basics of how can you use MSIX and things like that. And then the content is all available on GitHub as well, so we update that regularly, and then if there's a lab that you're like, I really need this lab, or I think this lab would be useful to other people, it is available for you to contribute to as well. Right. And it is live now on aka.ms/MSIX-labs. And
I do apologize for the overview video. You'll have to hear me ramble on for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
But the other cool thing about us, you'll see a lot of GitHub theme here, is we're really working to figure out ways we can release stuff faster and more open with you folks. So things like the training labs are, we did a workshop tour kind of earlier this year when we had launched MSIX. While I'm trying to, make million miler status with my airline, I shouldn't be gone all the time. So to scale out, we've took a lot of these labs and we've put them out onto GitHub. Likewise, I've just walked through a whole bunch of new features for MSIX. We're going to go and add new labs for that. So as we're adding things and growing things, it's a great spot for you guys to go and learn. I know some customers, they like the fact that they can just download the content and rebrand it and customize it, and then they used it for their own internal training as well. So we just want to give you as many resources as we can to be successful in MSIX, and just kind of share openly what we're learning with customers and sharing that with you.
Yeah, and if you're looking to do kind of like a super we give you everything that you need for the MSIX labs. If you use our Quick Create VM, which is available through Hyper-V, we've got an MSIX packaging environment, so you can get that set up, bring the labs in there, and you've got everything that you need for testing everything out. One more thing I want to mention also is our tech community. So if you guys are interested in kind of asking questions to our product team, learning from others who are working with MSIX, things like that. You can go to our tech community at aka.ms/MSIX community. Another thing that you can do there is you can actually also propose ideas for features. There's a whole ideas section, which we look at and use to fill out our backlog. So if there's a feature that you're really hoping for, feel free to go add that to the MSIX community.
And the idea is it's kind of like user voice. If folks have used user voice with other products, it's just nice. It's integrated in the same spot where you can ask questions and comments. And again, upvote, and we can give you feedback. We actually have some stuff marked completed since it started, as well as showing you guys some stuff that we're actually working on so you can get a feel for where we are with the product.
Yeah. And just to kind of wrap things up, we just kind of want to focus on the fact that MSIX is the deployment technology moving forward. So kind of like the features that John talked about earlier with, we're kind of taking away side loading. We really believe that MSIX is kind of the future. We're, making all of the investments. MSIX is our main focus, and so we're working to bring forward all of the features and parity and things that you guys need so that MSIX just works.
Cool. And thanks, and I think we ran a little long, but we still have a couple minutes for questions if folks have them. Oh, yes. Yeah, so the question was connection groups when? That was that flexible container slide. It won't be in 20H1, and we're working on planning it then. So we'll know a little bit better after 20H1 ships to be able to give you dates.
Do you have any plans for device drivers?
The question was, do we have any plans for device drivers? No, we don't actually. We don't have plans for shipping the driver in the package. What we're doing is we're working on a model that allow you to put a dependency on the driver, and then during installation tie it to something like Windows Update, Microsoft Update to pull the driver. So we can start separating it out, because that way, when you're doing things like a Windows Update, you can update the driver as part of the OS update process and not have to go and force that app install or block the entire upgrade for the app. So we're trying to tease the two apart. When I've been talking to people that actually ship drivers, they've been wanting to get out of the installation of driver business as well. So we're kind of prototyping some things out. You'll see some of the device companion apps. So when you plug in a USB device, it'll pull an app from the store. It's actually leveraging an early version of that, and we're trying that out and learning from that, and then going to grow that model out. Yes.
Will the new implementations like service support or connection groups be applicable also to legacy platforms like Windows 7 or Windows 8?
The question was, will things like services and connection groups be available to legacy platforms like Windows 7 and Windows 8? For connection groups, that won't be really relevant because we're not taking the containerization stack down level. It's still like an MSI, and it just writes to everything global. So there is a little bit of potential for PC rot as well. And then services, I believe when we launch MSIX Core, we'll be able to interpret the service and then install it like it would be a legacy service on that device. We'll know a little bit more once we ship the first version of Core, and then we go and add the services support as the OS is finishing up. Cool. Well, thank you guys. We're here for the rest of the day. Obviously, Sharla has another session after this where we're actually going to dive a little bit more into some of these topics around troubleshooting. And she also has a couple cool previews of some other new stuff that's coming up. I don't want to spoil it, but it'll be pretty cool to watch. So thank everyone for joining us. It's awesome being out here.